Sleep, Chisom.
Please, this is the 5th day. Wake up, Chisom.
Leave me alone, Kelechi. I'm finally home.
Can't you see her?
She said paradise smells like this.
Chisom was not always like this. Once upon a time, she woke up before the sun. She owned one of the biggest decoration businesses in Enugu. If Chisom touched a wedding hall, people said angels had passed through it. She was beautiful, ambitious, clean, the kind of woman who could not sleep if a single plate was left in the sink. Then she got married. 3 days after her wedding, she slept for 18 hours. Everyone said she was tired. 1 week later, she stopped bathing. They said she was adjusting to married life. 2 weeks later, she started sitting beside the kitchen waste bin for hours. By the 3rd month, she said something that made her husband afraid. Kelechi, the death makes me happy. He laughed. He thought she was joking. Until one night, at exactly 3:13 in the morning, Kelechi woke up and found his wife sitting on the kitchen floor. She wasn't crying. She wasn't afraid. She was smiling at someone sitting beside her. Kelechi asked, Chisom, who are you talking to? She slowly turned her head and whispered, Shh, shh, she's sleeping beside me. Kelechi looked around the kitchen. There was nobody there. Then Chisom smiled again. The old woman. Can't you see her? Kelechi saw nothing. Or at least, that's what he thought. Until his mother found white powder beneath their matrimonial bed. And an old man in their village looked at Chisom and said 6 words that would change their lives forever. Nne-Ura has finally found her. If you love stories like this, hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. People say evil does not knock. It smiles, then it hugs you, then it follows you home. If you had seen Chisom before she married Kelechi, you would never believe this story. That girl, she was fire. Not the kind that burns, the kind that gives light. People in Enugu knew her. If there was a wedding, naming ceremony, or burial celebration that looked too beautiful, people would ask only one question. Was it Chisom decor? And most times the answer was yes. She was 28, beautiful, hardworking, always laughing, always moving. The type of woman who cleaned her house before visitors arrived and cleaned it again after they left. She hated that. One time, a lizard entered her office. Do you know what she did? She closed the business for the day. Until that thing leaves, nobody's working here, she said. Her staff laughed for 3 days. That was Chisom. My son Kelechi Okafor met her at a wedding she decorated. He said he fell in love before she even spoke. According to him, any woman who could make a village town hall look like heaven could not possibly be a bad person. Poor Kelechi, love can make a man blind, and sometimes it can make him walk willingly into a curse. Their wedding was the biggest event our family had seen in years. Everybody came. People traveled from Lagos, from Abuja, even from the village. There was food, music, dancing, happiness. But there is something you should know about happiness. It has a way of making people stop paying attention, especially in African families. Because for every 10 people celebrating with you, there is usually one person silently asking God why it is not yet their turn. And sometimes that person is sitting in the front row. Chisom loved her aunt, Auntie Kem. In fact, if you asked her while she was growing up who her favorite aunt was, she would not even think before answering. Auntie Kem. That woman carried her on her back when she was a child. She attended every birthday, every graduation, every achievement. Whenever Chisom traveled to the village, Auntie Kem would cook her favorite ofensala and tell everyone, "This girl will make our family proud one day." She was the aunt who remembered everybody's birthday, the aunt who always arrived with gifts, the aunt who hugged a little too tightly. And perhaps that was the problem. Some people love you. Others simply become experts at pretending. That day, Auntie Kem sat quietly throughout the ceremony. She smiled, but her eyes never smiled. Beside her sat her daughter, Nne-Ura, 38, still unmarried. 12 years of waiting, 12 years of watching younger women wear white, 12 years of attending weddings and hearing people whisper, "She's such a beautiful woman." What happened? Nobody knew why every relationship ended. Some said it was village gossip, others said it was spiritual. In our village, old people say, when the elder's wrapper is still tied, the younger should walk softly. That day, Nne-Ura cried twice. The first time was during worship. The second time was when Kelechi placed the ring on Chisom. Nobody noticed, except Auntie Kem. And something changed in her face. Something dark, something old. That evening, just before Chisom entered the reception hall, rain began to fall. Heavy rain, the kind that comes without warning. Then the power went out. People laughed. Generators came on. Then all the decorative candles on the high table went off at the same time. Every single one. My grandmother stood up immediately. "Take this girl home," she said. "Something has entered this day." Nobody listened. Why would they? It was a wedding. People wanted jollof rice, not prophecies. Then came the moment nobody remembered until much later. Auntie Kem walked slowly towards Chisom. She carried a small handkerchief, white, beautifully folded. "My daughter," she said with a smile, "you look beautiful." Chisom laughed. "Thank you, Auntie." Then Auntie Kem embraced her. A long embrace, too long, and she whispered into her ear, "May your home know peace." She paused, then whispered again, "Sleep until your husband forgets your beauty." Chisom laughed. "What did you say?" Auntie Kem smiled. "I said, may your body know rest." Nobody saw the white powder fall from her hand onto the back of Chisom's wedding dress. Nobody, not the photographer, not even Chisom herself. By midnight, the wedding was over. By morning, the curse had begun. The first sign was small. Chisom slept until noon. Wedding stress, everyone said. The second day, she slept until evening. She must be exhausted. By the third day, Kelechi could not wake her. "Baby," no response. "Chisom," nothing. Finally, she opened one eye. "I was having the sweetest dream." "What dream?" She smiled. "An old woman was brushing my hair." Kelechi laughed. "Your village people have started already." 3 weeks later, nobody was laughing. Chisom stopped bathing, stopped cleaning, stopped decorating, stopped caring. One afternoon, Kelechi found her sleeping beside an open plate of food with 3 flies resting comfortably on her shoulder. Jesus! He nearly jumped out of his skin. Chisom, why are you sleeping here? She opened her eyes slowly, then smiled. I like the smell. Kelechi froze. The smell of what? She looked towards the kitchen. The old woman says this house smells like home. That was the first time Kelechi felt fear. Real fear. Because his wife did not say it jokingly. She said it like someone repeating the words of another person. And that night, at exactly 3:13 in the morning, Kelechi woke up. His side of the bed was empty. He walked into the sitting room, then into the kitchen. And there she was, Chisom, sitting on the floor, smiling into the darkness, as though somebody was sitting beside her. Then she whispered 4 words that would change their lives forever. She says, I belong to her. 3 weeks after their wedding, Chisom was sleeping 18 hours every day. 18! Do you know what that means? It means Kelechi spent more time talking to his wife while she was asleep than when she was awake. At first, everybody laughed. Enjoy it while you can, Kelechi told her one afternoon. Chisom laughed. If only they knew. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday. Kelechi called me laughing. He said, Mama, your daughter-in-law has done something. I said, what happened? He said, I found her asleep while brushing her teeth. I said, stop joking. He said, I'm serious. 1 minute, she was standing in front of the bathroom mirror. The next minute, she was snoring with a toothbrush still in her mouth. That boy even took a picture. Till today, I don't know whether to laugh or pray when I remember it. 2 days later, she slept during online church. The pastor was preaching about divine favor. Kelechi looked beside him. His wife had disappeared. He searched the entire house. Do you know where he found her? Under the dining table, sleeping. Chisom! Why are you under the table? It feels peaceful here. Peaceful? Under a dining table. Even the pastor would have ended his sermon if he heard that answer. By the 2nd month, nobody in our family was laughing anymore. One afternoon, Kelechi returned from work and immediately smelled smoke. Not the kind that comes from cooking. The dangerous kind. The kind that makes your heart begin to pray before your mouth does. He dropped his bag and ran into the kitchen. And there she was, Chisom, fast asleep on a plastic chair. One hand holding a cooking spoon, her mouth slightly open, snoring peacefully. Meanwhile, the pot of rice behind her had almost entered the spirit world. Smoke was everywhere. For 1 full minute, Kelechi stood there, frozen. His wife or the rice? The wife or the rice? In the end, he saved the rice. And honestly, I would have done the same thing. At least one of them was still useful at the time. But after that day, things changed. The calls started coming. Sir, is Madam okay? Sir, should we postpone Saturday's wedding? Sir, the bride's family is asking questions. Sir, clients are demanding refunds. One woman even wrote online, Chisom decor has disappeared like NEPA light. At least NEPA comes back eventually. Even I laughed when I heard that one. But laughter has a way of becoming quiet when fear enters the room. One morning, Kelechi sat beside her and said, Chisom dear, you need to remember who you are. She looked at him for a long time. I know who I am. Who? She answered with one word. Tired. That answer followed him for days. Finally, he insisted she return to the office, and for a moment it felt as though God had answered our prayers. Madame is back, her staff said. People clapped. Someone even started recording a video. For 23 beautiful minutes, Chisom was herself again. She smiled, she greeted everyone, she approved flower samples. Then somebody asked, "Madame, where should we keep the flower stands?" Silence. Nobody noticed when she left. 30 minutes later, they found her, sleeping under her desk, using a box of artificial roses as a pillow. One staff member burst into tears, another started speaking in tongues, and one foolish boy whispered, "At least, Madame has finally become part of the office furniture." Even Chisom laughed when she woke up, but Kelechi did not, because by then he had started to understand something terrible. His wife was still alive, but little by little, she was fading away.
But the thing that finally broke me did not happen at night. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, after church. I had gone to visit them with a pot of ofe nsala because in Igbo land, when your child is suffering, food is the first medicine. I entered the house expecting to see my daughter-in-law sleeping. Instead, I found her in the compound, sweeping. I almost shouted for joy. "Chisom?" She smiled. "Mama, look, I'm cleaning." For the first time in weeks, she looked like herself. She was wearing a simple yellow house gown. Her hair was neatly brushed. Even Kelechi looked like a man who had just won the lottery. My wife is back. Ah, if only we knew. Because after sweeping the entire compound, Chisom carried the dirt inside the house. Yes, inside. Leaves, dust, sand, everything. She poured it carefully in one corner of the sitting room. Then she sat beside it, smiling. I thought perhaps my eyes were failing me. "Chisom, what are you doing?" She looked genuinely confused. "I'm keeping it." "Keeping what?" "The dirt." "Why?" She smiled the way a child loves why they love sweets. "Because it makes the house feel happy." Nobody spoke. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop moving. A week later, I packed 2 bags and moved in. After watching Chisom sleep through breakfast, lunch, and half of dinner, I knew this was no longer ordinary. The next morning, while cleaning their room, I found something beneath their mattress. White powder. Fine. Fresh. My hands began to shake. "Kelechi?" He ran upstairs immediately. "Who came into this house after the wedding?" "No one, Mama." "Think carefully." Nobody came. Silence. I looked at the powder, then at Chisom sleeping peacefully on the bed, then back at Kelechi. That was the moment I knew we needed answers, and answers do not always live in the city. That night, I made a decision. We are going to the village. "For what?" Kelechi asked. I looked at my son for a long moment. "To find out who has been sleeping beside your wife."
People think villages forget. They do not. Villages remember everything. They remember who built the first house, who stole land, who married for money, and they remember curses, especially curses. We left Enugu before sunrise. Chisom slept through the entire journey. The woman could have slept through the second coming. At one point, Kelechi drove into a pothole so deep I nearly met my ancestors. Chisom only adjusted her head and continued snoring. Nobody laughed, not anymore. By the time we arrived in Umuekoro, the sun was beginning to rise. The village looked exactly as I remembered it. Red earth, ancient trees, old women sweeping their compounds, children chasing chickens, smoke rising from outdoor kitchens. But something was different. People stared, not at us, at Chisom. One old man carrying firewood dropped it immediately. A little boy pointed at her and ran back into her mother's wrapper. Even the village dogs refused to come near our car. I felt my stomach tighten. At the edge of the village stood a small hut beneath an Udara tree older than the village itself. That was where Dibia Nne-Ura lived. 97 years old, blind since childhood. People said his eyes stopped seeing human beings long ago. Now they only saw the things standing behind them. Before we entered his compound, Chisom woke up suddenly. No! We all turned. Her breathing had changed. I don't want to go inside. Why? Kelechi asked. She began to cry. Because she doesn't like him. The air became heavy. Who doesn't? Chisom covered her mouth, then whispered, "The old woman." Nobody spoke. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something in that village looking back at us.
Inside the hut, the Dibia sat on a wooden stool. White beard, red cap, cloudy eyes. Without raising his head, he said, "Why have you brought Nne-Ura into my shrine?" My knees almost gave way. Kelechi's lips parted. Nobody had spoken. Nobody had explained anything. The old man sighed. Nne-Ura, the mother of sleep, the woman who eats tomorrow. He pointed toward Chisom. That girl was born carrying light. She was meant to build things that would outlive her. She was meant to raise daughters who would change nations. His expression darkened. But now, he pointed again. Now, she sleeps beside death and calls it paradise. The room fell silent. Nne-Ura does not feed on flesh. She feeds on potential. She waits until people stop becoming who they were meant to be. I felt tears in my eyes. The old man continued. 3 women have carried this spirit before. The first slept beside her cooking fire until she burned. The second slept while carrying her child. The third sat beneath a mango tree for 19 years. 19 years? He nodded slowly. When she died, she still believed she was waiting for her husband to return from the market. I held my chest. Then, Kelechi asked the question all of us feared. Why Chisom? The old man became quiet. Then he said 6 words. The curse did not choose her. Silence. Somebody opened the door. Every hair on my body stood up because deep down, I think we all knew he was telling the truth.
I looked at Chisom. She had begun to cry. No. The old man struck his staff against the floor. Somebody who loved her. Somebody who held her. Somebody who touched her on a day she should have been protected. Goosebumps covered my arms. Then he said, "The spirit entered through a blessing." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Finally, Kelechi found his voice. "Old one, can she be saved?" The old man closed his eyes. Yes. Hope. For the first time in months, I felt hope.
Then he continued, "But hope has a price." He stood slowly. "She must remain awake for 7 nights. Kelechi laughed nervously. "That is all? If she sleeps before the 7th sunrise," his voice dropped, "she dies." I could hear my own heartbeat. "And if she dies, her daughters will inherit the waiting." Chisom began to shake. The old man continued, "Night 1, the dead will come. Night 2, she will beg for sleep. Night 3, the walls will begin to move. Night 4, she will no longer recognize her own face. Night 5, she will hear the voice of the one who invited this spirit. Night 6, her body will sleep while standing. And night 7, for the first time, the old man looked afraid. Nne-Ura will come herself." The room became cold. Then Chisom smiled, slowly, unnaturally, and in a voice that did not belong to her, she whispered, "Tell him," she tilted her head, "that I have waited a very long time." Then she turned toward Dibia Ezenwata and said, "Ask him why I should leave."
7 nights. That was the price of her tomorrow. Before we left the village, Dibia Ezenwata gave us a small clay bottle filled with a bitter herbal liquid. "She must drink this every night," he said, quietly. "It will strengthen her body, but it cannot fight for her. Only she can do that." The battle began that very night. Night 1. Chisom drank the bitter liquid and sat between Kelechi and me. Just before midnight, she began to cry. She was staring at our sitting room door. "They are calling me," she whispered. "Who?" I asked. "My grandmother." Then another name, and another. Dead relatives calling her lovingly to sleep. They promised her peace. They promised her rest. But she covered her ears and said only one thing: "I want my tomorrow." Night 2 was worse. She begged us not to let her sleep. Then suddenly she began begging to sleep. "Please," she cried, "only 5 minutes." An old woman's voice was singing lullabies that only she could hear. She fought the sleep until morning. Night 3 came with fear. She screamed and pointed at our walls. "They are moving." The walls seemed to breathe around her. Dark shadows danced across the room. Kelechi held her tightly all night. We prayed until morning. But by the 4th night, I no longer recognized my daughter-in-law. She stood before the mirror crying. "Mama," she whispered, "that is not my face." She kept touching her cheeks, touching her eyes. She saw an old woman staring back at her reflection. That was the first night I cried when nobody was looking. Night 5 came with another voice. "Chisom," my daughter. It was Auntie Nkem's voice, soft, loving, calling her home. "Sleep, my daughter. Everything will be all right." Several times, Chisom stood up and began walking towards the front door. "No," Kelechi shouted, pulling her back into his arms. By then, none of us had slept properly in days. We were fighting for her tomorrow together.
Night 6 nearly broke us all. Her body had become too weak to fight anymore. Several times we found her sleeping while standing. Her eyes would slowly close while she remained on her feet. Kelechi followed her everywhere, even to the kitchen. He was afraid to leave her alone for 1 minute. Then, shortly before midnight, there was a knock at the door. Nne-Ura stood outside crying. Nobody spoke. Then she fell to her knees. "I cannot carry this anymore," she whispered. That night, Nne-Ura called her mother and begged her to come. The 7th night had finally arrived. No one dared to speak above a whisper. Something was different. For the first time in months, Chisom was no longer fighting sleep. The heaviness was gone. Her eyes were clear. Her mind was awake. She looked at me and smiled. "Mama, I don't feel tired anymore." Before anyone could answer, the room suddenly became cold. Every lantern went out. The walls seemed to breathe. Then she appeared. An old woman, grey wrapper, white eyes, a broom made of dry bones resting across her shoulder. Nne-Ura, the mother of sleep. She looked at Chisom for a long time. Then she smiled. "So, you chose tomorrow." Chisom wanted to run, but she did not. She stood beside Kelechi, held his hand, and answered quietly, "I choose my life." For the first time, the old woman looked disappointed. She nodded slowly. "Then, so be it." Then her body began to fade, not into darkness, but into smoke. The smoke drifted through the open window, across the village, until it entered another house, Aunty Nkem's house. That same moment, Aunty Nkem was preparing to sleep. She smiled to herself, certain that nobody would ever know what she had done. Then the room became cold. The smoke gathered behind her. Before she could turn around, Nne-Ura was standing there. The old woman smiled. "You invited me. You fed me. You gave me a home." Aunty Nkem tried to run. Her legs refused to move. The spirit touched her shoulder, the same shoulder that had brushed against Chisom's wedding dress. Immediately, her eyes became heavy. She collapsed beneath her own bed. Not beside it, under it. Called into herself like a frightened child, still whispering, "I'm not sleepy. I'm not sleepy." But sleep swallowed every word. From that night, nobody ever saw Aunty Nkem awake after sunset. Some mornings, neighbors found her asleep behind her front door. Other days, she woke up inside her empty kitchen or beneath her dining table, never remembering how she got there. The same prison she built for another woman had become her own. 6 months later, life returned to our home. Chisom decor became busier than ever. Her laughter filled the house again. She slept only at night and woke every morning with fresh dreams. Then came news nobody expected. Nne-Ura was getting married. The whole family gathered again. This time, there were no whispers, no jealousy, only joy. As I watched Chisom stand proudly beside Nne-Ura as her chief bridesmaid, I realized something. God had healed more than one daughter. He had broken a chain that had lived in our family for generations. As Nne-Ura's wedding car disappeared into the golden evening, the road ahead looked empty, until an old woman in a grey wrapper appeared at the roadside. Nobody else saw her. She smiled gently, touched the side of the passing car, and whispered, "Thank you for waking me." This story reminds us that not every battle begins with evil spirits. Sometimes it begins with jealousy, bitterness, and a heart that refuses to heal. What we carry inside can shape the lives of the people around us. So, choose forgiveness over resentment and never allow another person's success to become your burden. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another unforgettable African tale. And before you go,
Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had someone envy you so much that they secretly try to destroy your happiness or hold you back? What happened and how did you overcome it? I can't wait to read your stories. Until our next story, stay safe, stay kind, and remember, every choice we make today echoes into tomorrow.